Hi everybody and welcome back to lesson 3 of Let's Get Knitting. This week is going to be a tough week because we're going to learn how to purl as well as knit. But once you get the knit stitch and the purl stitch, you can do any stitch because the purl and the knit are the basis for most of the knitting patterns you'll find. So if you can manage the purl stitch, we're there, okay? You've got it. Now, so this week I'm going to show you how to do a farrow rib, and I'm also going to show you some little tips, and I just want to show you the swatch that I had done. Now you may notice in the tutorial video I'm actually knitting this swatch, and I'm knitting 2 yarns, as you can see. So what I did there was I put 2 yarns together because I felt the wool wasn't thick enough. So that might be an idea if you have wool at home that you want to use but you feel it's too thin. Just put it together with another wool and you can knit, no problem. So I've been busy knitting swatches all week and I had great fun. It did take me a while to get this stitch correct because it just did my head in. But I did get there, so don't stress out, keep at it, okay, because you will get there. And also this week I'm going to throw in a few little knitting lingos into the mix. So from now on every week I might put in some new information about pattern reading. I'm going to keep it very, very basic because I don't want to overload you with too much information. Okay, so let's get started. Stitch. I just wanted to bring your attention to the blanket itself, and basically I suppose now that you know how to do a basic stitch, I think it's time that maybe we could start planning the squares and how many squares we need to make the blanket. Now a simple way to do that is I've just drawn out this little diagram here, and I have decided to make my blanket to the size of a throw that you'd put on a couch. Now, if you wanted to make your blanket bigger, what you can do is you could go to an online shop and just Google duvets, double size duvets, or you could Google single size duvets, and what that does is in the descriptions it gives you the size of the blanket. So what I've done here in this diagram is I have found out the measurement of a throw, which is 200 centimeters by 240 centimeters. So I have measured one of my squares, so I just averaged it out. So the width is 14 centimeters and the length of my square is 13 centimeters. So in order to find out how many squares I need for my throw, what I do first is I divide the width of the throw by the width of my square. So that would be 200 centimeters divided by 14 centimeters, which gives me 14.28, but I'm going to round it off to 14 squares. The next part is the length of the throw is 240 centimeters. So I am going to divide the length of the throw by the length of my square, which is 13 centimeters. So that gives me 18.46 centimeters. So that means I'm going to round that off again. So that means that I need 18 squares for my length. Now, at this stage, you can figure out how many squares you need altogether, which is quite scary. So you multiply 14 by 18, which is the width by the length. So I got 252 squares. So at this stage, I might actually make a cushion cover instead of a blanket because that is very daunting, but we'll see how I get on. So I've drawn a diagram of my blanket, and the reason I've done this is so that I can lay out exactly what colours I want to go where on my blanket, and it'll just give me a clearer idea of what I'm doing and what kind of a design I want. So I'd advise everybody to do this, because my blanket now is going to be made up of loads of different colours, and it's going to be a fairly organic process because I have a lot of scrap wool that I need to use. But if you wanted to use maybe just 2 colours, you could do amazing designs with your blanket squares. So in the next couple of clips, you're just going to see some designs that I picked out that are really, really lovely. And you can do these designs yourself. So just by drawing your diagram and colouring in the squares, whatever way you want to create the design. You could also go online, look at Pinterest is a great resource for designs. And if you just searched for knitted square blankets, it would bring up some wonderful coloured designs just to get you inspired. So that's what I'm doing anyway today, and it's great as well because it's very relaxing and therapeutic, and it kind of takes your mind off things. And then what you can do is you can focus on every row as you go along, and when you have a row of specific coloured squares done, you can tick it off on your diagram and then go on to your next, and it just makes planning it a lot simpler. So this stitch is done in multiples of 3, and that means that you have to knit 2 plain stitches and then purl 1 stitch. So what I've done here is instead of 20 stitches, I've added on 24 stitches onto my needle. Now you could add on 21, but I've added on the 24 because this swatch actually comes out a lot smaller than the plain knit swatch. So I've just added on 24 stitches just so my squares are all the same size. Now next week I'm going to show you how to do a tension swatch, and that will help you figure out what size your squares need to be for every different stitch you do. Okay, but today now we're going to focus on the farrow rib. So the first thing you do is you cast on your stitches as normal. Now I've just knitted a bit there, and I'm going to show you exactly how we do this stitch. So you're just going to go in like you normally do into your stitch, go around your needle, pull it out, pop off your stitch, do the same for the next one. And now for the purl, what you need to do is you need to bring your wool over your needle to the front of your needle like so. And then you're going to go into the back of the stitch. So you're going in here. Now you're not going in here at this back. Actually, what I should say is you're going into the front of the stitch. God, I really do confuse people. So you're going into the front of the stitch, and then you're wrapping your wool around your needle, and then you're just going to bring it through the loop and pop off your stitch. So I'll just do that again. Now when you go back to knit your normal stitch, you need to remember to bring the wool that's in the front of your needle, bring it to the back of the needle, or else I don't know what kind of a stitch you'll end up with. Okay, so here we go again. Push your needle into your stitch as normal, knit it as normal, pull off your stitch, in again, knit as normal, pull off your stitch. Now bring your wool to the front of the needle like so, and then push in to the front of the stitch, wrap your wool around your needle, and then pull it through the loop and pop off your extra stitch. So you're knitting 2 and you're purling 1, and that is the sequence. Knit 2, purl 1. And if you were to look at a pattern for that, what it would say is K2, which is knit 2, and P1, which is purl 1. So there's my square knitted. Now I never know how many rows I've done, and I don't have the patience to sit there and count them. So what I do is I basically take the bottom of my square at the corner and I fold it over, And if it touches the other edges of the knitting, it's a square, and then I cast off because I'm very lazy. So I'm going to show you how to cast off now. And this is slightly different than your normal cast off because you've got a different stitch in there. So you're going to knit your stitch, pop the first stitch over the second stitch, knit this stitch, pop your first stitch over your second stitch, and then with this one you're going to purl it. So bring your wool to the front, pop your needle in the front of the stitch, wrap your wool around, pop it off, and then pop your first stitch over your second stitch. And you basically do that until the very end, until you have it all cast off. So as always, if you see the pattern that I'm knitting this week and you say to yourself, God, I don't like that square, that's fine. You don't need to put it into your blanket. It's up to you what knitted patterns or what squares you put into your blanket. It's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you what style you use. The only thing I'd say is I'm going to continue doing knitted squares every week till infinity. No, not really, no. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we're just going to keep going because, you know, we're having a bit of fun now. So it's up to you what you want to incorporate into your blanket. But I really do hope that you utilize the diagram plan because it does make things a lot easier. It makes it more practical and more clear when you use the diagram, and you can see where you're going, you can see how many squares you need, and you know, you can color code the blankets and everything and do up your own designs, so it'll be fantastic. So anyway, as usual, have a great week and get loads of knitting done, and hopefully the weather will improve a bit, so you might get outside and do a bit of knitting, and I'll see you back again next week for more knitting. Okay, bye bye.